just have one other thing to add, and it's a good segue from what the General ended with. Today, the Department of Defense can announce that it has authorized Marine Corps Base Quantico, Virginia, Fort Pickett, Virginia, and Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico, to provide additional support to the U.S. mission to evacuate Afghan special immigrant visa applicants, their families, and other at-risk individuals. These installations join Fort Lee, Fort McCoy, Fort Bliss, and Joint Base McGuire-Dix in providing this support. The Defense Department will continue to support the State Department in providing temporary housing, sustainment, and support inside the United States for a capacity of up to 50,000 Afghan special immigrant visa applicants, their families, and other at-risk individuals. U.S. Northern Command will coordinate the details of all this with the State Department, the Department of Homeland Security, and, of course, the Department of Health and Human Services as necessary. And it will be provided under presidential drawdown authority to the maximum extent possible, with additional support being provided on a reimbursable basis. And as General Taylor let you know, we have General Van Herk, the commander of U.S. Northern Command, coming into the briefing room with you later this afternoon, and he'll be able to provide a lot more context on that. With that, we'll take questions. Lita.
This is probably for the general. The president has said he wants to vow basically to get back at ISIS. How difficult will it be for the U.S. military to do that type of operation, considering the lower number of troops and the difficulty in getting intelligence on the ground? And then, I don't know if this is you or John, can you just talk about the number of people that we'll see getting processed over the next several days? Is that number going to gradually go down? Do you have out the number of people you think you're going to, or what's your ballpark estimate?
Yeah. All right. On the first question on our capabilities and abilities to protect ourselves, or to also to conduct the strikes, as you said. As I've said all along, we have resources with the CENTCOM commander and with the commanders on the ground, and the capabilities to allow us to execute any type of those operations as those are required to do.
So, Lita, again, we're still planning on ending this mission at the end of the month. And as I said the other day, as we get closer, and we are getting closer, you're going to see us begin to make those muscle movements to pull out our troops and some of our equipment as appropriate with any retrograde. What we want to do is preserve as much capability for as long as we can, both in terms of the security footprint, but also in terms of the ability, as the general alluded in his opening statement, to moving out evacuees. Lives are still the priority, and the lives of our troops, and of course the lives of evacuees, and trying to continue to get as many out as possible. So there will be a balance over the next few days as we continue to process through that transition, as we continue to, as what we call, retrograde. And I can't give you a specific number on any given day, but I think you'll see us adjust as necessary to make sure that we're achieving that proper balance. But we will be able to fly out evacuees right up until the last moment. That's going to be the goal. And if I may, you didn't ask this, but I want to take the opportunity to convey to all of you that, as we did before, when we began a retrograde, a withdrawal back in April, we were very judicious about the detail that we were putting out. And I just want to level set with all of you that you're going to see us become more judicious now going forward as we get closer to the end of the month about what information we're giving you in terms of how many troops on the ground. I would not expect us to be giving that number out in going forward, and what the capabilities are and where they are and what they're doing. We're going to be very, very mindful of the operational security element of this, and I think yesterday is a stark, grim reminder of why that's important going forward. I know that's not what you asked, but I wanted to take an opportunity to get that out there. Jen.
John, how can you say with such certainty, and how can General McKenzie say with such certainty, that the Taliban were not involved in this suicide bombing? I understand that you're reliant on them for protection around the airport, but are you ruling out them being involved because you're so dependent on the Taliban right now?
Actually, I didn't hear General McKenzie put it that way, Jen. In fact, I think in one of the questions he got, and I think it was Idris's, he said, Idris asked, was there a failure? And the general said, of course, there was a failure somewhere, obviously. And he even alluded to the fact that it could have been at a Taliban checkpoint. So we've not been certain about that at all. There'll be an investigation. We'll try to learn as much as we can about what happened. And I really don't want to get ahead of that process.
And in terms of ISIS-K, how many ISIS-K prisoners were left at Bagram and are believed to have been released from the prison there? And why weren't they removed before the U.S. pulled out to some place like Gitmo?
Well, I don't know the exact number. Clearly, it's in the thousands when you consider both prisons, because both of them were taken over by the Taliban and emptied. But I couldn't give you a precise figure. And as for emptying out, remember, we were turning things over to Afghan national security forces. That was part of the retrograde process, was to turn over these responsibilities. And so they did have responsibility for those prisons and the bases at which those prisons were located. And of course, as the Taliban advanced, we didn't see the level of resistance by the Afghans to hold some territory, some bases, and unfortunately, those were bases that the Afghans didn't hold. But all of those responsibilities were turned over in accordance with the retrograde plan back from April. Idris.
I think this is more for the general. Yesterday, General McKenzie talked about wanting to talk to the Taliban about pushing the perimeter back as one of the sort of ways to avoid another incident. Has that happened? And I know you can't say by how much, but has it significantly been pushed back? And what are you seeing in terms of flow to Abbey Gate? Is it less people being allowed in? Is it still a rush of people, which could lead to a similar incident? What are you seeing today at the gate?
So what I can report as my discussion with the commanders there on the ground is that multiple activities have taken place to increase the force protection, specifically in communication with the Taliban of how they are executing their checkpoint operations and communication when there. So I would say there's been multiple. I don't want to go into the details of the exact of what the communication, but I know that has happened. And what we have seen today is a little lessening of what we would say total capacity at people in and around gates.
Yes, Nazira.
Thank you, John. As Jen said, ISIS since yesterday, people were worried about everything about the Taliban. They were psychologically under a lot of situations. Some of my family get targeted and tortured by the Taliban. But since yesterday that ISIS created, Afghan people are more worried. Do you think that it's another civil war will start in Afghanistan? That's why most of Afghan people question. And everybody now want to leave the country because now it's double. Before was only Taliban. Now ISIS also show up one more time their activity. Do you think that's another civil war? Start soon?
Before I try to answer that question, I do want to take the opportunity on behalf of the Department of Defense to also make sure that we express our condolences for the Afghan people who suffered in yesterday's attack. We know that there were a number of killed and wounded Afghan civilians at the airport, and that there are families that are dealing with the same devastating, terrible news that now Gold Star families here in the department are dealing with. So again, on behalf of the Secretary, we offer our condolences and thoughts and prayers. I wish I had a crystal ball. I wish we could know for sure what's going to happen in Afghanistan. We don't. We obviously don't want to see the country torn asunder through civil war. But that's why whatever the future of Afghanistan is from a governance perspective, we're going to stay engaged with the international community to make sure that Afghanistan's leaders are held to proper account for the way they are governing, and that Afghanistan's neighbors also try to play a constructive, productive role in whatever the future of Afghanistan is going to be. Though we will not have a military presence there, the United States government will still want to see what we can do in the international community to make sure that that Afghans can have the best of all possible outcomes for their future. But I think it would be foolish for us to try to be too predictive about what's going to happen right now.
You will not change the policy again to be involved again in Afghanistan?
The Commander-in-Chief has made a very clear decision that it is time to end America's involvement on the ground in the war in Afghanistan, and we're going to execute that.